Hi guys, welcome to today's video. This is going to be my spring TBR. So firstly, I need to address my hair. If you are a returning viewer of this channel, you might notice my hair is different. It is now blonde, and I know it's like a bit purple because when I was toning it, it made it a little purple, but it's gonna wash out. It's fine. I just thought I should address that because I wanted to. I don't know. And also I live in Australia, and so we are going into spring and summer, while in America and other places you are leaving summer. So if there's any confusion, that's why I'm doing a spring TBR, because we are going into spring in Australia. I have quite a few books for my TBR. Not all of these books are books that are like spring vibes that I want to read because it's spring. I don't necessarily read based on the seasons. I will read books that are like 4 books or anything like that just whenever. I don't really read based on the seasons, but some of these books are books that gave me more of spring vibes that I'd like to read in spring, and others are just books that I want to read in spring in the next 3 months. So yeah, this is my TBR. It is quite big. I try to include most genres, a bit of everything, just what I want to read and get to. So let's get into it. The first book we have is Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This was a romance book. It is a very loved romance book in the book community. I don't know a lot about this book and a lot of other books because I like to go into books kind of blind. Like, I like to know a bit about the story but not a lot. I don't usually read the blurb, and if I do, I often forget it. So I won't go into detail, obviously, about what the books are about because I don't know. I can give you a brief idea of what I think it's about. Archer in this book, I'm pretty sure he's mute, and I think it is also quite a sad story. I think there are some deep topics explored, but I think it is also like a happy ending. But yeah, I think it's quite a deep romance, but people love this book and I really do want to read it. I am very interested in the story, especially with Archer being mute. That is really interesting to me and I want to see how it's done, and so this is high on my TBR for spring. The next book, The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter and I did like it. It wasn't like a favorite of mine. I gave it 4 stars. I know a lot of people love that book. I didn't love it like everyone else does, but this is an adult romance by Lynn Painter and I've heard some really good things. Ellen Catherine read this in one of her reading vlogs and she loved it, and I loved hearing all of her thoughts, and like she just said this book made her really happy, and that is exactly what I want in a romance. I think the premise of this book is they're having this competition to see who can get the most dates. They're not interested in each other, but they're each other's perfect wing person, and they have a wager to see who can find romance first. That's very interesting. I just heard this is a very sweet book. The next few books is the Dreamland Billionaires series. I have been meaning to get to these books for quite a long time. These books are based, I don't know about the other books, but I know this book, the fine print, the guy in it works at Dreamland, which is basically like Disney. The plot is kind of based there, I think, and all of these books, I think it's a bit of enemies to lovers. I've heard a lot of good things. I think there's a lot of grumpy, sunshine, all that jazz. But yeah, this has been on my TBR for so long and I really want to read them all in spring. Oh, okay. This is the last romance I have. Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a very popular romance book in the book community. I think almost everyone has read it. It is quite a big romance. I don't actually really know much. Oh, actually, I know a bit of what it's about. I think the female main character in this book ends up looking after her sister's kids, and then the guy in this book helps her out. He's been through some trauma, so as the female main character. Some people don't like this book, some people love it. This cover is like 100% spring. Like, you can't tell me this isn't spring, but I feel like I have to read it since it's such a popular book. Okay, the next few books are fantasy. So the first book we have is The Hobbit by J.R. Tolkien. The Hobbit is like a classic fantasy. I feel like everyone's heard of it, but I think a bit more of a cozy fantasy. Like, there's not a lot of world building, there's not a lot of politics. It's a bit more relaxed from other fantasies. But like I said, this is like a classic fantasy. It follows, I think there's dragons and wizards, and it's like a journey, and it sounds like a lot of fun. I feel like this is the perfect fantasy to read in spring because I feel like a lot of fantasies are kind of more like fall and winter vibes, but I also want to read fantasy in spring and summer, and I feel like this is a book that gives that spring vibe Maybe. That's what I think anyways. Okay, the next one is The House in the Corel Sea. I've been wanting to read this book for such a long time. The story just sounds like so much fun. I think it's a bit more of a cozy fantasy. I think there's like magical children. Like I said, I forget. But from what I've heard, this book sounds really good. The next book, this isn't really a spring book, but I really want to read it soon. So that is Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. This is the first book in a duology, and it's like fantasy romance. I've heard so many good things about this series. It's also quite a thick book. It sounds like so much fun. The girl is a thief, and then the son is a leader. A cat and mouse game. Ah! This sounds so good. I'm so excited. Next, I have literary fiction. First book, Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This, I feel like I've said this for every book. This was really popular. A lot of people love this book. I think it's a bit about video games and a romance. It sounds like a really interesting story, and I really want to read it. It sounds like such a heartfelt story, and also the prospect of the video games is really interesting. And then I have Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. I think this is a historical fiction about a woman in the scientific world. Firstly, I love this cover so much. It is so cool. Secondly, this sounds really good, and I really want to get to it. It's set in the 1960s. It sounds so good. And then the next books I have are classics. These books are more of hopefuls. I'm not the best at reading classics. They take a lot longer for me to read. They take a lot more brain power. But I mean, I want to read all of these, but it's easier said than done when it comes to classics for me. But yeah, these are hopefuls. Classics I hopefully will read in spring and hopefully love. The first one is Perfume by Patrick Suskind. This I've been wanting to read desperately for so long. I'm just a little scared because classics intimidate me. But this story, I think, is in the perspective of a murderer, and he has a really strong sense of smell. And I've just heard so many amazing things about this book, and so I really hope to get to this in spring. The next book, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. This is obviously, it's classic, so it's very well known and loved. One I want to get to. I actually don't know much about this story. All I really know is the fig tree metaphor, which I love that metaphor, and I can't not read this book. Like, I feel like it's an obligation. I have to, and I hopefully will love it. I mean, that's the goal with every book I read, so I don't know. The next book is Little Women. I need to read Little Women because Little Women is Little Women. Like, I have to read it. I haven't even watched the movies, which I feel like is a crime, but I'm determined to read the book first. And even though I haven't watched the movies, I have seen a lot of the edits and stuff from the movies that I love. I love the March sisters, even though I haven't even consumed the book or the movies, but I have seen a lot about them, and from that I love them. And so I really want to read the story because it's just like, it's such a beautiful story about women and all their different life goals, and I want to read it so bad. Okay, we're on to the last book, Anne of Green Gables. This is actually a book I started quite a while ago and stopped reading because I just wasn't in the right headspace for it. I wanted something easier and quicker to read, whereas this book is very wordy, I guess. Like, Anne thinks a lot, she has a big imagination, she rambles quite a bit, so you get a lot of that in the book, and it just wasn't what I wanted to read at the time. But I desperately want to get to this, especially in spring, because this is a spring book. I watched the show Anne with an E, and I loved that show. It was so good. And so I really want to read the book, and it's a like children's classic, so it's not really that difficult to read at all. And I also want to continue the series. I love Anne so much. She is the cutest, and she deserves the world. I love female young characters that are just different and that get unfortunately bullied for being different, but like they're just uniquely themselves, like Luna from Harry Potter, and I can't think of another one, but yeah. Hopefully I'll get to this in spring. So that was my entire spring TBR. Thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you like, you can follow my bookstagram or my book talk and subscribe. if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more. Thank you. Bye.